the nude. Upstairs, homeless, and they've been whipped between the nose and upper lip. Mustache, 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 mustache. Mustache, 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 mustache. Mustache, 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 mustache. 100 hairs make a man. I try to handle my design. My Fu Manchu is real fine. My Ronald Cole.
Hey everybody, I'm Scott Gregory. I teach grade 4-5 at Yarrow Community School, and I'd like to say thank you to all the people that helped me with my Movember fundraiser. All those cash donations were really appreciated. Even those kids that gave me a toonie at the school, I thought that was awesome. So thank you very much for helping me with this. We offered some incentive prizes to the kids, and one of them was that the staff would get together and create another book read aloud video. And we chose the book Moostache because I thought it fit this theme very well. I'd like to say thanks to all the Yarrow staff that helped me create this video. And without further ado, I hope you enjoy our reading of the book Moostache. Thanks. Moose had a problem. A horrible, hairy, prickly problem. It grew right below his nostrils and just above his upper lip. A moustache. Now, not a few spare hairs or shy little stubble. No mere weak wandering whiskers on the upper lip of this moose. No siree. Moose had a big, bushy, bristly, mighty moustache. But a moustache that was a burly, surly, mangy mess. And it itched a lot.
Sure, he plucked and he tweezed, he even clipped, snipped, and teased. But his combs were still cowards, and his brushes rebelled. His scissors simply surrendered.
Moose was in a frizzy tizzy. The moustache was completely crimping his style. He was a great hoofer, but he could barely bop and hip-hop with a moustache going flip-flop.
He was a wonderful chef, but he could not flambe his soufflé with all of those whiskers in his way. And he was a daring skier, but how could he downhill race with the mighty moustache blowing in his face? Moose had to do something, and soon. But what?
After days and days of much serious thought, Moose had an idea. He crossed some hair here, he crossed some hair there, and he tied his moustache around his neck. A moose scarf seemed to be the ideal answer to his problem. It was so simple, so easy, so perfectly perfect.
But then his moustache got knotted and mangled and tangled, and those hundreds of hairs still prickled and tickled. Worse, Moose couldn't hardly take a breath with all that moustache wrapped around his neck. So Moose untangled, untied, unwrapped, and unknotted, and gulped in a fresh breath of air.
He got another idea. He parted some hair this way, he parted some hair that way, and he heaped all that moustache on top of his head. Moustachioed antlers seemed to be the ideal answer to his problem. It was so simple, so easy, so perfectly perfect, until a squadron of squirrels and one very nosy gopher moved right into the Moose Motel. They huddled and hoarded, furrowed in, burrowed out.
Needless to say, it became quite crowded up there on Moose's head, and heavy, and messy.
And very, very noisy. The squirrely chitting and chatting, squeals and squawks woke Moose every morning before the crack of dawn, and that gopher was giving the moose one hairy headache. Moose needed his sleep. He needed his rest. He needed his privacy. Moustachioed antlers, Nuts, said Moose. So he unparted and unpiled, untwisted and untwined, and said adios to the hairy horns.
But now what? What? The miserable moose took hold of a hunk of hair, and he wrestled it. Then he roped it. He tethered it, tied, tamed. Aha! A moose tail! Now that was simple. That was so easy. That was not so perfectly perfect.
Talk about Daisy Do. A moose did not know if he was coming or going. Backward, forward, this way, that? He did not know which end was which. Moose had to bail on the tail.
And so he thought and thought and thought some more. But no other idea was a worthy winner. Braids were a bother, a moustache sweater? Too sweltering.
Not. Poor Moose. His problem was truly terrible, unbearable, just downright sad. He felt so alone. He didn't know what else to do.
Then, call it fate, call it destiny. It was probably dumb luck. But one day, Moose tripped on his moustache and just had no time to duck. Pardon me, they both said as they bumped. Then they blinked and they stared and their hearts went thumpity thump.
She was a moose with a bouffant so bodacious, outrageous. Well, it was just plain old big. Hair after hair piled higher than high, a skyscraping dew of glorious curls, a tower of swirling twists and twirls. She was simply splendid, stupendous, absolutely superb.
Of course, Moose had to ask how she did what she did to get such a do. Miss Moose winked and then whispered just a little glue. So she helped he fearlessly plunge a hoof into a fat pot of the white gooey goop. And carefully, oh so carefully, they glopped and they plopped, they pasted and they pressed, they coaxed and curled every truly unruly wayward whisker. Around and around they tweaked and twirled those horrible hairs until Moose's once mangy mess was now a wondrous winding wave of marvelous moustache. Moose gazed in the mirror and smiled a broad, moosey smile. He was so happy, so glad, just giddy with glee. He looked dashing and handsome. Moose gushed, "Is that really me?"
With not a care for one hair, the moose pair boogied and bopped. They skied downhill, even uphill. And their cooking was hot, hot, hot.
Of course, it wasn't long after that Moose and his moustache and his beautiful bride, Fox, trotted and tangled and waltzed down the aisle. Good hair days, bad hair days, they vowed to love and to cherish, and with hearts heaped with love and pots full of with gloop, they both sighed, "I do glue," and promised never to part.
It was so simple, so easy, so perfectly perfect. And it stuck.
Mustache, 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 mustache.